One. Hello, my name is Daniel Hodab, and I'm the facilitator of the Law of One Europe Telegram group. And today we have another session with our amazing host, Gabriel Lugo. Hi, Gabriel.
Daniel, amazing is this session, I have to say. I am so excited to get into this. I hope you guys read my excitement in the Telegram group. So, yeah, thank you everybody for joining. Thank you everybody who's watching this on YouTube. Also, if you're not in the Telegram group, go ahead and check the description where you're going to be able to see the link to join beautiful people that are all there. So, we're going to get into session 13. And again, you are going to see why it's so beautiful to me. I'm going to read it directly. So if you guys want to follow, check either the books if you have them or online if you want to follow that way. But I'm going to go through the whole session. So yeah, there's so much to get into here. And I want to cover it all, actually. There's nothing here that I want to skip. So just to give a premise, we're going to get into a description of reality from beginning to fourth density. If you follow this sort of model or linear evolution of the creation, so from the beginning to fourth density, that's how powerful this session is to me. And to me, the most important thing that I'm going to hone into is the essence of reality as you, as the self, as always. And there's a beautiful, beautiful glimpse here. Again, before I begin with the session, I wanted to share that when I did this session 4 years ago, more than 4 years ago, I had a very mind. It was like the ruling part of my brain or mind at the moment. And I gave it that spin, I think. Now I look at it so differently, even though, that was a beautiful perception too, or perspective. But yeah, no, this is totally different now from this point of view. So I hope to transmit that to all of you today, because that's our shared being, what Rod's going to talk about. So, all right, without further ado, let's start with the first question, which is Don realizing from session 12, right? Remember how session 12 was like 80% transient material as Ra defines it, all about UFOs and so on. Don says here at the beginning, his first words are, first thing I would like to do is apologize for the stupid questions. I don't think they're stupid, but those are Don's words. Stupid questions that I've asked while searching for what we should do. I consider what we are doing a great honor and privilege to be also humble messengers of the law of one. And at this time, believe that the way to prepare this book is to start at the beginning of creation, following the evolution of man and the evolution of man on earth to the best of my something inaudible, at all times investigating how the law of one was used. Inaudible again, this is lost in the recording. I think also that I need to finish the book. Let the material we have already carry the end of the book. I would also suggest the title of the book, The Law of One, I would like to state as the author, Ra. Would you agree to this? And so Ra says, in essence, please ask again. There were a couple of questions there. Question two, Don says, can we begin basically from the beginning of creation? And Ra says, that is your completely discernment, understanding decision, basically saying, that's up to you, whatever you want to do. We're here to talk. Don says, secondly, I would like to title the book The Law of One by Ra. And this is where Ra says, the title is acceptable, but we would like to just be called humble messengers of the Law of One, not the authors of the Law of One, which again it's a very subtle sixth density way of saying The um, the teacher is not the teaching. The teacher is just the channel through which the teaching is being filtered through. And I love to say that all the time because that takes weight off the shoulders and out of the pedestal, the teacher. Um, when you appreciate the teacher is what you're appreciating yourself reflected on the teacher. Because, of course, what we teach is what's within us already. And that's what we learn. The same thing. Teach learning. Um, we're up to question 5. So here we begin. Oh, I'm so excited about this. So Don says, thank you. Can you tell me the earliest first known thing in the creation? So what's the first thing in creation? Ross says the first known thing in the creation is infinity. The infinity is creation. So infinity, that which we are, that which is the foundation of everything. Don says in question 6, from this infinity then must have come what we experience as creation. What was the next step of the next involvement? And Ross says infinity became aware. This was the next step. Now, we can see just a little pause here. We can see that Don is approaching this in a sequential way. He wants to know, and that's how our minds work. It wants to know what is the sequence. Um, there is, of course, a timeless state at this point of what we call creation. So it's not easily understood by our minds how this happens. But um, there is a sense in everything that is said at this point. Infinity and awareness are both the same thing, right? Awareness is infinite. And so infinity becoming aware is just simply its own quality. Question 7, Don says, after this, after infinity becomes aware, what happened? Ra says awareness led to the focus of infinity into infinite energy. You have called this by various vibrational sound complexes, the most common to your ears being logos or love. The creator is the focusing of infinity as an aware or conscious principle called by us as closely as we can create understanding learning in your language, intelligent infinity. So here we have um, it's not explicit, but we have the first 2 distortions of the law of one. The law of one being, of course, this infinite being, this oneness, which is not really one thing, it is. But here we see it reflected as logos or love. That's the second distortion, by the way. Um, Again, the creator is the focusing of infinity as an aware or conscious principle, and they call it intelligent infinity. This makes sense because, or I like to point out that when we Westerners think about infinity, it seems to be like a mathematical concept or some abstract idea, but uh, infinity is intelligent. It's not inert. It's not something bereft of life, let's say. It's the source of all life. So that's intelligent infinity. Question 8, Don says, can you state the next step? And Ra says, the next step is still at this space-time nexus in your illusion, achieving its progression as you may see it in your illusion. The next step is an infinite reaction to the creative principle, love, following the law of one in one of its primal distortions, freedom of will. Here is a little bit more explicit, the first distortion. Thus, many, many dimensions, infinite in numbers or in number, are possible. The energy moves from the intelligent infinity due first to the outpouring of randomized creative force. This then creating patterns which in holographic style appear as the entire creation, no matter which direction of energy is explored or energy is explored. These patterns of energy begin to then regularize their own local, shall we say, rhythms and fields of energy, thus creating dimensions and universes. This all seems very complex. I want to offer you the exercise or the the exercise of exercising your own imagination and see what happens. You see, what we call imagination, let's make a pause here and let's try to make it a little bit more concrete in our experience. What Ra refers as intelligent infinity is pure awareness. I want to ask you the question, or you ponder the question, what's the difference between awareness and imagination? Imagination is not something defined, right? We just call imagination the power of creativity that we have in our minds, right? Does that make sense? That infinity of awareness is the same as imagination. So when you imagine something and you read this, see the same thing. How does energy move? From intelligent infinity, which is pure awareness, there is an outpouring of randomized creative force, right? You try to imagine something, whatever it is, a beach, a mountain, people, a party, whatever it is, right? There is an outpouring of randomized creative force, which creates some patterns, and this all seems to happen, in an instant, but this is what's happening. And it's in a holographic style again, because you're seeing the same thing. You're using the same energy, and it's moving in the same pattern, which is love. Your imagination is made out of the same thing, love. And then that appears as the entire creation, and it doesn't matter in which direction or energy or imagined thing we explore. These patterns of energy then begin to regularize, right? The more you imagine something, the more it feels real in your mind. And again, just play with this exercise. And you're going to see that that's the same principle of creation. You ever heard that this is a dream? Same thing. This is being imagined. Ra said it. You're a thought, and you're all coming from the original thought. So these patterns of energy then begin to regularize their own local rhythms and fields of energy, thus creating dimensions and universes. You see the power of co-creation here within you. And we all think it's just imagination. Same principle. You have to admit this is beautiful. All right. So, question 9. Don says, then can you tell me how the galaxy and this planetary system were formed? Again, Don, very scientific. He wants to know this. And I agree. I would love to know, what does this all have to do with galaxy and planets and people? And that's where we're heading. But I want you to keep this in mind. I want you to keep this in the field of your imagination right now. Just keep playing with this. Know that this is what's creating everything. And it's not really matter. Matter is just how the mind looks from the outside. All right. Ross says, you must imagine a great leap of thought in this query. For at the last query, the physical, as you call it, universes were not yet born. So there was no physicality. Of course not. It's just pure creative force that is there. And we haven't imagined anything yet at this point. Ross says the energies moved in increasingly intelligent patterns until the individualization of various energies emanating from the creative principle of intelligent infinity became such as to be co-creators. Thus, the so-called physical matter began. The concept of light, capital L, that's the third distortion. The concept of light is instrumental in grasping this great leap of thought, as the vibrational distortion of infinity is the building block of that which is known as matter, light. The light being intelligent and full of energy. thus being the first distortion of intelligent infinity, which was called by the creative principle. Creative principle is love. So if you follow, again, I'm pausing here, there's still a little bit more out of this answer. But just for those of you who like to keep sequence and connect things, Ra's playing with the three first distortions here to explain what's happening. Remember always that the creative principle is love. That's the second distortion. So light is what is being called by love. How do you see this in your imagination, the exercise? Why would you imagine something if not out of love? Again, don't confuse love or the feeling or the appreciation that comes in the mind, but rather the creative force. That's what love is. There is a desire to imagine something, even if it's something terrible in your mind. There is a desire for that. Why? Because you want to experience it. Again, playing with the exercise of imagination. If you imagine a story, if it doesn't have any conflict or bad things happening, it's boring. Nobody wants that, right? So you can also explore the desire for exploring negativity. We can go on a tangent here. But the reason why you want to do that is because you desire it. So that's the creative principle. It's love. It's a desire to experience things, whatever it may be. And you know it's safe because, well, you're imagining it. Nothing real is happening. You see the holographic style of creation here. So, oh, I could go longer here, but let's finish what Ross said. They say this light of love was made to have in its occurrences of being certain characteristics, among them the infinite whole paradoxical described by the straight line, as you would call it. This paradox is responsible for the shape of the various physical illusion entities you call solar systems, galaxies, and planets, all revolving and tending towards the lenticular. So this is a little bit more metaphysical in terms of how and why things move the way they do. And it's that spiraling light that is moving towards infinity. Question 10, Don says, I think I made an error in asking that question, getting ahead of the process that you were describing. Would it be helpful to fill in that great leap that I mistakenly made? Fill in that great leap. Because Ross said in the past, in the last question, that you have to imagine a great leap of thought. But Ross says, I attempted to bridge the gap. However, you may question me in any manner you deem appropriate. In other words, I just tried to fill in that gap. But you can ask me anything you want. So Don says, could you tell me, taking the question previous to the one I asked about galaxy and planets, would you tell me the next step that occurred after that step, which was, yeah, after the first two distortions, right? They didn't talk about the third distortion here. And this is where Ra says the steps, as you call them, are at that point or at the point of question, simultaneous and infinite. So this is light. This is just the infinite amount of possibilities of experiencing itself, of life, creator, God experiencing itself. That's what they are, infinite. Light, capital L, becomes light, lower cap. Okay, so Don says in question 12, that's where we are. Could you tell me how intelligent infinity became, shall we say, I'm having difficulty with some of the language, how intelligent infinity became individualized from itself? So how did intelligent infinity or infinity became finite? Well, Ross says this is an appropriate question. The intelligent infinity discerned a concept, or rather awareness or infinity became a concept. What was this concept? Ross says this concept was discerned due to freedom of will of awareness. In other words, by being aware of itself, then it developed this concept, and this concept, as Ross says, is finity, limitation. Ra continues and says, this was the first and primal paradox of this or distortion of the law of one. So the primal paradox, it's beautiful because how can the infinite be finite? Well, that's because awareness of itself can only experience itself in the finite form. This is why, and I'm making a pause here, but I just can't help but wanting to bring you to the experiential checkbox, right? How do you know this is true? That infinity cannot experience itself unless it objectifies that which is. That's the primal paradox, right? Primal paradox. Well, think about who you are, what you are. And you have to take away all the finite concepts because that's appearing in you. That's not who you are. You are that which contains a finite definition of you. Yes? So if you notice this and you just try to follow through your being, can you find a first a limitation? No. So is there any objectivity about you as you are? Essentially, no. So that's infinite. And it checks because it doesn't have any separate parts. So that's the paradox. How can the infinite become finite? Well, that's the reason. They continue saying, thus, the one intelligent infinity invested itself in an exploration of manyness. Due to the infinite possibilities of intelligent infinity, there is no ending to manyness. The exploration, thus, is free to continue infinitely in an eternal present. The infinite and the eternal. Space and time. The real reality of space and time. That's the exploration of infinity. Through manyness, there is no ending. It will never get tired of experience itself. Isn't that awesome? Question 13. Don says, was the galaxy that we are in created by the infinite intelligence, or was it created by a portion of the individualized infinite intelligence? It's a tricky question. But Ross says the galaxy and all other things of material of which you are aware are products of individualized portions of intelligent infinity. As each exploration began, it in turn found its focus and became co-creator. Using intelligent infinity, each portion created a universe, and allowing the rhythms of free choice to flow, playing with the infinite spectrum of possibilities, each individualized portion channeled the love light into what you might call intelligent energy, thus creating the so-called natural laws of any particular universe. There's a lot to unpack here. I'm just going to finish. They say each universe in turn individualized into or to a focus, becoming in turn co-creator and allowing further diversity, thus creating further intelligent energies, regularizing or causing natural laws to appear in the vibrational patterns of what you would call a solar system. Thus, each solar system has its own, shall we say, local coordinate system of illusory natural laws. It shall be understood that any portion, no matter how small, of any density or illusory pattern contains, as in a holographic picture, the one creator, which is infinity. Thus, all begins and ends in mystery. Whew. So this is a rundown from intelligent infinity through the different portions that we see as galaxy, solar system, planet, And I love how it ends. Um, I could spend a good half hour here, but I won't. What I want to emphasize is that last portion, of course, which is after, this whole description, right? How the hierarchical logoi from the grand central sun to the individual galaxies to the individual star to the planets to the human being, all of these being holographic in nature, they all contain the one creator, which is infinity. I think this is important because sometimes when we look at this picture, we say like, "Oh my God, I'm so small in the universe." That's the classic, view that we have of I'm so small. The universe is so big. Um, and it's the total reverse of the mystical understanding of reality. You look at the universe and say, "Well, this is so small." What I am is has no limits. So it's important to keep this in mind. You see, the one creator, which is infinity, is contained everywhere. But that's our problem. Our problem is that we still look at ourselves as being contained within something, within a body, within a planet, within a universe, etc., etc. You must reverse this so this dissonance disappears. And how do you do that? By realizing the one creator, which you are, which is infinity. Then there is not even, it's, how should I say it? Um, it doesn't check out. It's false to imagine something like that. So it's like a uh, 2 plus 3 equals 5. It just doesn't even you dismiss it right away. That's how this feels from this point of view. Anyhow, let's move on. There's a lot more to cover. Question 14. Don says, could you tell me how the individualized portion of intelligent infinity created our galaxy? That the same portion created our planetary system, and if so, how this came about? There's an inaudible part of this question, but how intelligent infinity created the galaxy, and that same portion created the planets, star, I guess, also the sun. But Ross says, I think we answered that question already. Could you restate? And they did, because they already explained how intelligent infinity precisely created the galaxy, the star, the solar system, well, planets, and so on. So Don rephrases the question and says, primarily then, how the, shall we say, the planetary system that we are in now, our solar system, evolved. Was it all created at once, or was there first our sun created, and there's an inaudible part, was created? So he's questioning about this sequence of creation in the solar system. And Ross says the process is from the larger in your illusion to the smaller. Thus, the co-creator individualizing the galaxy creator created energy patterns, which then focus in multitudinous focuses of further conscious awareness of intelligent infinity. Thus, the solar system of which you experience inhabitation is of its own patterns, rhythms, and so-called natural laws, which are unique to itself. However, the progression is from the galaxy spiraling energy to the solar spiraling energy to the planetary spiraling energy to the experiential circumstances of spiraling energy, which begin the first density of awareness or consciousness of planetary entities. Uh, Once again, so much I can unpack and then ramble on. Um, So we have in the holographic nature of our creation, we have, of course, a step down, which again, this is sort of a repetition of what they said a couple of questions ago. It's interesting to note that they say that our solar system has its own patterns and rhythms and so-called natural laws, which are unique to ourselves. We explored this a lot more in archetypical mind and so on, but we won't get into that. Um, what I want to point out here, which is there is a direct relationship between what they explain here, the progression, right, of galaxy to solar to planetary, and they go all the way to the first density of awareness. Okay. Um, I am unsure, but I tend to think that when they say the first density of awareness, does anybody have an idea of what the first density of awareness is? Write it in the chat. I'd like to see what your opinion is. And then I'll talk about this. But this is inevitably related to the um, Kundalini, to the energy centers. That's what we experience as humans, right? That spiraling energy is the same. And so if we look at how things form, we see the same thing in evolution in ourselves. So just keep that in mind that this is a description also that is related to energy centers and what we call Kundalini. Same thing happening to the planet. That's why it's moving to fourth density and so on. And everybody here is moved by that energy. Question 16. Let's see. Josh says elemental, fire, air, water, earth. Yeah, that is probably one of the options, or definitely one of the options. But the first, see what's coming to me, Josh, is that the first density of awareness could also be related to third density, because this is the first density of awareness. There's one part where Ra talks about that. So I don't know. I'm in between the two. That's why I wanted to check with you guys. But that could also be. And then we can get, of course, into yeah, 3D is self-awareness, but it's we have to check back. We have to check because there's a part. I'll look it up. But it just made me think of they might. But it could be first density. Could be first density. There is a part where Ross says first density of awareness because first density is not aware. It is awareness, but it's not aware. So anyhow, minutia. Um, we'll go back to that. All right. Question 16. Speaking of first density, Don says, could you tell me about this first density of planetary entities? And Ross says, each step recapitulates intelligent infinity in its discovery of awareness. In a planetary environment, all begins in what you call chaos, energy undirected and random in its infinity. Slowly, in your terms of understanding, there forms a focus of self-awareness. Thus, the logos moves. Light comes to form the darkness according to the co-creator's patterns and vibratory rhythms, so constructing a certain type of experience. This begins with first density, which is the density of consciousness. The mineral and water life upon the planet learning from fire and wind, the awareness of being. This is the first density. Yeah, so this may corroborate what you're saying, Josh. Um, we'll talk about it more at the end. I just thought about that one part where they say that third density is the first density, but it might be self-awareness, like you say. So yeah, this is the first density. There's a description of this and the patterns of rhythms and how, in essence, this intelligent energy begins to move in a particular way or vibrate in its own rhythm, right? And that's what creates the first densities, which again, Josh also added there, the four elements that we know. Question 17, Don says, does this first end density then progress to greater awareness? We know this answer. It's true. Yes, it does. Beautiful. This is the first missing link that I always mention between um, modern science. We don't know how organic molecules began to move, basically, or where DNA started to form. So here is the part of the missing link again. It's awareness. Ra says the spiraling energy, which is characteristic of what you call light, right? It's just is the inertia of movement to move back into infinity or stillness, if you will. That's the spiraling energy vector, right? That's what's characteristic of what we call light. It moves in a straight line spiral, thus giving spirals an inevitable vector upwards to a more comprehensive beingness with regards to intelligent infinity. This is evolution. This is the guiding force of evolution. Whether we see it in the physical or metaphysical, it's the same thing. Thus, first dimensional beingness strives towards the second density lessons of a type of awareness which includes growth rather than dissolution or random change. That's the nature of first density, dissolution and random change. So second density, they are of a type of awareness that moves and grows. These two, that's what guides second density. It's movement and growth, and of course, experience. And I don't think I'm getting ahead of myself here by saying that the purpose of growth and or movement is so this experience, which takes millions of years, apparently, or at least it did here on planet Earth, millions of years of experience to develop self-awareness. That's what creates eventually the possibility of third density. Question 18, Don says, could you define what you mean by growth? And Ra gives a very simple explanation here, which is great. I love simple. And they say, picture, if you will, the difference between first vibrational mineral or water life and the lower second density beings, which begin to move about within and upon its being. This movement is the characteristic of second density, the striving towards the light and growth. And I'll couple it with the next question where Don says, by striving toward light, what do you mean? And Ross says a very simplistic example of second density growth striving towards light is that of the leaf striving towards the source of light. Again, I know it's a very simplistic example because this same light is the light that, empower your desire to not be watching Netflix right now or something else, but to listening to some bearded random guy in Pennsylvania talking about the law of one. It's a desire for enjoying more of this light of awareness. So yeah, this is the movement that is characteristic of second density. It moves towards that light, which again, simplistic is the sun. The light that they're looking for is self-awareness. I'll talk more about this when we get into their purpose, which is going to come up soon. Question 20 at this point. Yes, Don says, is there any physical difference between first and second density? For instance, if I could see a second density planet and a first density planet side by side in my present condition, could I see both of them? Would they both be visible? And Ross says this is correct. All the octave of your densities would be clearly visible were not the fourth through the seventh freely choosing not to be visible. So this can go into a lot more to expand in terms of the other densities not being visible, the veil of forgetting perhaps being included here. But yeah, everything could be visible. The influence of fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh, of course, are always available or visible between or within time space or astral projection or who knows what else, but it's just not visible in the physical is what I'm trying to say. That's what they're talking about here. Question 21, Don says, then how does the second density progress to the third? And here it is. I have something to say about this. Ra says, the second density strives towards the third density, which is the density of self-consciousness or self-awareness. The striving takes place through the higher second density forms who are invested by third density beings with an identity to the extent that they become self-aware mind-body complexes, thus becoming mind-body-spirit complexes and entering third density, the first density of consciousness of spirits. So here's the part that I'm kind of contending just to play a little bit. This is the first density. Third density is the first density of consciousness of spirit. And there's another part, I think, in session 19, where they talk about this. But the one part that I wanted to talk about here, which is just me being a nerd, um, they say that the striving takes place. They're talking about second density moving into third, right? They're developing self-awareness. Well, the striving takes place, they say, through the higher second density forms. So higher second density forms, we talked about this a couple of sessions ago, are those animals and plants. I wouldn't know how to distinguish plants that are higher or lower, perhaps trees or something like that. I'm not sure. Some of you may have a better understanding of this. But the thing is that higher second density forms are invested by third density beings. My analytical mind says, well, what happened when there were no third density beings here? How do they strive into self-awareness? My answer to this is, again, it's just my view. That's why it took millions of years, right? Or billions, right? It took billions of years for second density to develop self-awareness. So it doesn't really require third density, but when there is third density present, that accelerates tremendously. Of course, it's just like if there is fourth density, I can imagine a planet that is third density and is completely sealed. Why not? It's an infinite universe. Try to imagine a third density planet. I'm just playing here, but try to imagine a third density planet, bunch of humans in a planet, and they're sealed, meaning that there is no fourth density interaction. How long would it take them? How long would those cycles be? I don't know. I'm playing here with the model. So something like that, I guess, in second density, there is no access to third density. Although Ra does suggest in the future here that there are some confederation entities, higher densities, that do play a role directly with second density, and they only serve second density to help them graduate, of course. So I don't know what's going on behind the scenes there. Far from me to speculate, but I'm just playing again. In any case, third density does have a crucial role. Us humans have a crucial role with animals, particularly, to help them develop self-awareness. Pets. So I think we're moving into the last question here that I'll cover. Question 22, Don said, what is the density level of our planet Earth at this time? Ra says the sphere upon which you dwell is third density in its beingness of mind, body, spirit complexes. It is now in a space-time continuum, fourth density. This is causing a somewhat difficult harvest. We can unpack this if you want. I won't do it right now myself. But we know that we're fourth density vibration at this point. And Don follows up with, how does a third density planet become a fourth density planet? Ra says this will be the last full question. The fourth density is, as we have said, as regularized in its approach as the striking of a clock upon the hour. The space-time of your solar system has enabled this planetary sphere to spiral into space-time of a different vibrational configuration, that being fourth density. This causes the planetary sphere to be able to be molded by these new distortions. However, the thought forms of your people during this transition period are such that the mind-body-spirit complexes of both individual and societies are scattered throughout the spectrum instead of becoming able to grasp the needle, shall we say, and point at the compass one direction. Thus, the entry into the vibration of love, sometimes called by your people the vibration of understanding, is not effective with the present societal complex. Thus, the harvest shall be such that many will repeat the third density cycle. The energies of your wanderers, your teachers, and your adepts at this time are all bent upon increasing the harvest. However, there are few to harvest. So, this is the last stop that we make in this session, and it's all the way to fourth density. We can talk about this if you want, because this is what I would call the second part of this session. We first went from the infinite to the creation, to the manifestation of creation and planets and so on. And then we took a very brief tour, but complete to my view, of the first four densities and their relativity to what we know, even though they didn't go into so many details. But we know self-awareness being, of course, a third density, movement and growth being a second density, and what was it? Chaos and random change, or dissolution and random change, that is first density. So that all of this describes basically the patterns that we see, very convincing reality that we see as an illusion, but still, it's a very, very powerful imagination or dream that we're in. Yes. And then it's the moving now into fourth density, which is the density of love and understanding, or understanding. Sometimes Ra makes that distinction. This last question that I cover also shows a little bit the state of the planetary society, right? That they say, well, on um, Don says in one of the final questions, I would like to apologize for asking sometimes wrong or inappropriate questions. It's difficult sometimes to ask precisely the right question. I don't wish to go over any ground that we have already covered. I notice this period is slightly shorter than previous periods. Is there a reason for this? Well, this has to do with Carla's vital energies. But yeah, here is Don being too hard on himself. I think it was good reflection, and it says a lot about him at the beginning when he said, sorry to ask all those transient questions. We're moving into this material, but I think he's being too hard on himself at this point by apologizing for going. I mean, it's totally normal. And again, I just wanted to honor Don for his exquisite questions and lines of inquiry. He was sometimes too hard on himself, and yeah, this reflects it's just I'm in awe as to how he was able to listen to this very monotone, slow transmission of information and still ask very appropriate questions. So yeah. Um, the rest of the session is, can we have another session today? And yes, you can. But that's it. Um, I wanted to make this as, well, are you guys there? Did I lose my Zoom?
I'm here.
Why is my Zoom not showing anything?
Can hear you.
I can hear
Okay.
you.
Oh, there it is. Why is it like this? All right. Yes. No. I just wanted to say I'm done. But my Zoom disappeared, so that's all I got.
Thank you very much, Gabriel. It was indeed an amazing session. Uh, Somebody want to comment something or ask a question? Please feel free to do so. You may raise your hand and ask a question.
Yeah,
So yeah,
the last thing I wanted to say is that I kind of went through it as not as fast as possible, but trying to cover everything because I wanted to leave some time, of course, for discussion and talk about this. There's a lot to say here, so yeah.
okay, then we have first question from Joe. Joe, unmute your microphone and ask a question.
Yeah. I just wanted you to go over again the why infinity cannot know itself except in the finite form. Could you explain that again, please?
Yeah. Um, so the infinite can know itself as infinite, but there is no objective quality there. You see, infinity can only know the infinite, whereas the mind or the finite concept that Ron talked about, right? That primordial mind can only know finity or the finite. So think about it as the infinite must, and this is the paradoxical part that Ron talks about. It can only, it's not that it can't know itself. For example, do it in your own experience. Are you aware that you are aware? If I say to you, your answer was yes there. So, but if I say, are you aware of my hand? Yes,
Yeah.
you are aware of my hand. You see, there's an objective quality. You check with your eyes and look at my hand. But when I ask you, are you aware? What did you look at? Where did you check?
I don't know. It's just a knowing. I don't know what to say.
Beautiful. That's it. You just know that you know, and there is no objective quality there. That is infinity. It's that simple.
Right.
Anything else that you know through the mind must have an objective quality or be finite. Whereas awareness of that which is aware, which is you, has no qualities.
Okay. Yeah, I get you now. I understand. Well, sort of. Thank you.
Yeah, just, and if I can add something else there, don't think that there's anything else that you must process there because the mind will struggle to try to understand this. And it will struggle until the point that it gives up. And when it gives up, you're back to square one, awareness of being aware. That is the essence of meditation. That is the essence of realizing unity. This is the return to the creator. This is knowing yourself as the creator, God. That is what you are. And if you ask everybody else on the planet, are you aware? They'll say, yes, of course.
Mm.
How beautiful. We're all checking in the same place. By the way, this is why Ra said this is the first density of awareness of spirit.
Yeah.
So equate spirit with the same awareness, awareness of infinity.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Joe. So I would like to come back, Gabriel, to what Josh wrote in the chat about fire, air, water. So this is a meaning here that in the first density, I believe to remember that Ra says something that there is fire, air, water, and so on, and then they become aware. So aware of that they are separate from the infinity as a first. let's call it entities, beings in the elements before the planet is formed. What are your thoughts on that one?
Could you rephrase the question on first density becoming aware, you said?
I remember somewhere the Ra contact they said, and they're talking about the first density, they're talking about fire, water, air, and earth. So, and then I think Ra mentioned that they become aware. I think aware in the meaning of that they're separated from the infinity and the as separate elements, not separate as I think it's difficult to explain, but you get my point, I think. Awareness of being, Josh is writing. Yeah, that is I think where I want to go to.
Yeah, I wouldn't know how to, other than, I mean, there needs to be something that is aware of what's happening. So I don't know if this shines some light on your question, Daniel, but awareness is the only thing that can be aware of anything. And so in this case, if we're talking about the first density that is actually manifested or created, that primordial awareness is what is aware of that. This is what begins the process of logos or logoi, which are, again, a holographic focus of the same aware principle. And that creates its own patterns of vibration. First density, as far as I can understand, can have many forms, infinite forms. What we experience here as these elements, it's what Ra calls our own patterns and rhythms. So that which is aware becomes aware through the first density of itself, and then that moves holographically again into the creation through the different entities, second density, third density. And in third density is when that which has been created becomes self-aware. So it seems to be like we're separate, but it's the same awareness. It's just that through this formation of first, second, and third, it becomes aware of itself. So that's also, I can precariously connected here with the extension of free will, which is to do with the veil of forgetting, but it doesn't really matter. It's just the extension of free will to the third density entity that is aware of itself, and it becomes co-creator at that point. That's what creates the mind-body-spirit complex, which is a co-creator. I would say the first stage of co-creation. Does that make sense? I know it's very convoluted in terms of what we are ascribing awareness to.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will think about it. I think it was a good point that you make here. We have another question from Lynn. Go ahead.
About first density, I just share, not question, just share the experience. And if we meditate, and because we are everything, every being, right? There's just one awareness, one conscious. So if we meditate deep and by some certain stage, so my experience, you will become the infinite, because you come into some kind the nothingness and oneness. Then it's easier to, for example, for me to just like this moment I was the drop of dew on the tree. Then I feel the just awareness or the beingness. And this is some kind of, maybe if now I think it's kind of the awareness in what the first density, like storm, like wind, like cloud, feel like that. And I think is my experience with meditation. We can get that kind of sense, how to say that, there's no word indeed in that state, to describe that. I hope I can I make my, it's difficult to describe that in words, and so in that state it's also easier. You can be a storm, but you can also be a cloud. You just cheer. I feel it's just awareness, just cheer, and you are everything. Just so that is my experience in meditation. Which some moment I got that state, so I can feel how storm feels. I hope it sounds a little bit weird, right? Yeah.
No. Thank you very much, Lynn. Gabe, you want to say some words on that?
Yeah, I think, Lynn, the reason why is it's difficult to talk about this. It's because we are so used to creating the character that is having, the experience, but there is no character here. There is just, like you said, in meditation, there's just awareness. So in a way, we're tracing back into the true self.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that, the character comes back and says, I, Gabriel, I, Lynn, had this experience. It's just difficult to say it, but it wasn't you. It was
Right, it
awareness.
wasn't me. This was nothing.
The self, the one awareness. Yeah. So I find this often, but if we remove the character and there is just experience, who experiences experience? Only awareness can be aware of experience. But it's our privilege to create the character, and it's fine. It's okay to do it. It's fun. That's how we share this reality together. So yeah, it's fruitful to just get with the experience, and yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lynn.
And
Go ahead.
another sorry, my source is about, see, there's a huge indeed investment, so many wonders or volunteer sent to earth and try to awaken to, try to support or help the transformation and to get more entity awaken, or so to speak, ascension. Indeed, I feel all the people here really interest or devote self to the past are all wonders. There's nearly, for me, there's no chance to, I don't want to say persuade or influence the other beings. The influence, sure, we act just as we are, just the beingness, just like it's a beacon, but the influence to the other beings, to other self, is so narrow, so tiny. Is so I just thinking, okay, the huge investment, what universe is doing here, but the harvest or the result, the fruit is nearly not there. All the people in this path is already, the volunteer come to here. Some seems to me. So yeah, it's maybe maybe the one is all, like Ra said.
Yeah,
How could we? I sometimes I ask, but there's no better way to say, okay, how could I do the service? How could I, yeah, to ignite a slight sparkle in someone else? They're just sleep there, slumber like ever.
yeah, so can I use the law of one and then use my own um my own view to help you with this, Lynn?
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking about the service that we can provide, obviously, for ascension and for density harvest and so on. Ra says here that the greatest service that we can provide is I'm paraphrasing, but um, to express the creator as it is known to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another part that is related to service or the greatest service. Two distinct parts. I just can't remember, and I won't look at them right now. But also is to go within yourself, to offer the self to the creator is the greatest offer, or something like that. Now, take the two parts, and if somebody else has something to share, I'll look them up and I'll either put it on the chat or talk about it. But if you combine the two, what Ra is suggesting is that you move into yourself to offer the self to the creator. The self, they always refer to self, not as in Eastern philosophy, particularly Hinduism and Buddhism, really Buddhism, but not that self,
Mm-hmm.
but
So that self is the whole. Yeah.
right. They call
Mm-hmm.
that the creator in their
Yeah.
language.
Yeah.
And in their language, self would be possibly, Jivatman, which is the manifested self. This idea of me, the character, not so much the character, but this manifest. So offer this, right, to the creator. And then awareness of the creator shared with others, that's the greatest service. So does that mean that we have to predicate some sort of word, law of one, Bible, Quran, whatever? Maybe. Maybe that's your service. But that's not what it means, essentially or fundamentally. To express the creator
Mm-hmm.
is to simply be who you are. And it's so simple. So we often, when we hear this, we say, wait a minute, how can I be the way I am if I have all these flaws? So now we get into inner work and so on. So why you're so afraid to express yourself, be the way you are, or to try to prove yourself in other ways, like just be as you are. That's it. And out of that, people get inspired. People, admire your being, and that's what we call humbleness. You don't see that in you. You just simply say, like, I can't take credit of this. This is just simply who I am, you know? So that paradoxically is basically what is expected of everybody. There
Mm-hmm.
is, and I'll go metaphysical here. This is just my view. And if we narrow ourself, obviously, into a finite being that is helping other finite beings, that's not very helpful. So if we see ourselves as, I need to go help people, which again, could be a manifested desire of you wanting to do that, nothing wrong with that. But to believe that that is the best way of service, I think it's quite limited. Whereas if you dedicate yourself to yourself completely, it's not service to self, this is not being selfish and so on, not being spiritual bypass or anything. It's just dedicating to yourself. Then that radiates not just, you don't have to go out so people can see you. That's going into the matrix of the planet. In other words, dissolving yourself is the best service that you can have. And at the same time, that radiates or starts radiating. Does that make sense, Lynn?
Sure. Yeah, but it calls for a lot intelligence in that, in the daily act to do so. Indeed, the wisdom is called for here. Really, yeah.
This is a very interesting subject because I think I haven't found the balance myself yet. There was a time that I was like very isolated to focus on my spiritual awakening and growth. And then it became a time that I'm servicing to others. And I don't have time for myself. I was just talking to Josh on the phone like an hour ago. I was telling her, like, I feel I'm getting pulled from a million directions. And I just even don't have time to just, fully sit there and meditate and all that. It's just like always something happening. And I really needed to hear this today. And I wanted to thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Shah, and Lynn
Yeah.
as well. So, if no one else have a comment at the moment, no, I don't see anyone. So
Balance.
then I would ask Gabriel to give us some closing words for this session today. It was amazing, by the way.
Sure. Thank you for enjoying it. I feel like with friends and playing with toys, people come out and play with toys with me on Thursday. The law of toys. I'm gonna finish just surfing the wave that Lynn started. I got the quotes here. This is perfect. It's beautiful. We just went in this session to the core of what we are. We explored it with a couple of exchanges that we had. And then Lynn finishes this up with this beautiful, beautiful closing words. So Ross said, these are the two parts that I mentioned. The best way of service to others is the constant attempt to seek to share the love of the Creator as it is known to the inner self. This involves self-knowledge and the ability to open the self to the other self without hesitation. This involves radiating that which is the essence or the heart of the mind-body-spirit complex. Eloquent words to say the best way to serve others is to constantly seek to share the Creator as you know it. And this reflects as self-knowledge and the ability to be open to other people without hesitation. And this is radiating the heart of what you totally are, divested of all your supposed impurities, which is not something that you have to work on. They're just there when you think about it. And when you don't think about it, they're not there. How curious, right? So stop thinking about them. Stop associating with them. And previously, Ross said, Don was asking, we're going to get this in 2 weeks from now. What is the greatest service that our population on this planet could perform individually? So this is nothing to do with other self. They say there is but one service. And if you think about it, what I'm going to read is how this greatest service, this one service, is applied to others. So what they say is the law is one. The offering of self to the Creator is the greatest service. The unity, the fountainhead, the entity who seeks the one Creator is with infinite intelligence. From this seeking, from this offering, a great multiplicity of opportunities will evolve, depending upon the mind-body-spirit complex's distortion, with regards to the various illusory aspects or energy centers of the various complexes of your illusion. And then they say some become healers, some workers, some teachers, and so forth. In other words, your mission, your purpose, your dharma, your vision of life will develop out of this constant seeking of the one creator within. Apply this to other selves, or just the radiation of this as you know it, and you continue learning how to improve that service, which is your natural state of being. That's it. That's all there is. But there is but one service. The offering of self to the creator is the greatest service, period. That's it. I can't say
Thank you very
anything else.
much. Thank you very much, Gabriel. Looking much forward to next week, and yeah, then see you next week.